Hello, all, and welcome. Thank you for joining us today from wherever you are. Um, I will begin by introducing myself. I'm Marine Hermes. I am the Next Century Foundation's uh, Research and UN Liaison Officer, and I'll be chairing this meeting. Today, we have an amazing discussion planned. We've got two panelists. We've got Dr. William Morris. Um, William, William is the Secretary General of the Next Century Foundation, um, and he has spent a lot of time in Bahrain and studied the Middle East extensively. Ali, on the other hand, is our second panelist, and he is a Bahraini MP, an ex-Bahraini MP, um, and both of them will be discussing the recent developments in Bahrain. Um, I will start by giving the floor to William. Please, thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much. We're a small select group at the moment, but hopefully more will join us, and I'll kick off and say a few words. Actually, it's interesting to be in this position, just since we're few in number, but it is on the record, so I must behave myself because all this is being recorded and will no doubt be played out on YouTube. But I'm very touched by Bahrain is a place I know and love. And when we at the Next Century Foundation work on Bahrain, I think we're much misunderstood, both by the government and the opposition sometimes, because we really care for Bahrain and try not to be partisan. But I mean, I will take a position, I think, that will express particularly what I feel is important, and I'll try and make sure I cover the government's position. What's important, I believe, is the need for inclusive elections in the Kingdom of Bahrain. The Kingdom of Bahrain, as you know, is a constitutional monarchy. The system of representation in Bahrain is bicameral and consists of a lower house, the Chamber of Deputies, and an upper house Shura Council. And the Chamber of Deputies has 40 members elected in single seat constituencies for a 4-year term, and the Shura Council has 40 members appointed by the King, and the King appoints the Prime Minister, a system that gives the monarchy, of course, full legislative control. So, King Hamid. King Hamid bin Isa Al Khalifa has ruled since 1999, when King Hamid took power. He liberalized Bahrain. He extended the franchise to women, granted women the right to stand as candidates, and instituted parliamentary elections in the kind of modern sense. In some contrast, indeed, to the opposition as regards his attitude to women. I mean, King Hamid adopted many liberal measures in defiance of the opposition parties, the latest of which has been to grant citizenship to the children of Bahraini women married to non-Bahrainis, as recommended by the UN Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women and by this foundation. King Hamid likes to think that he could be loved. His loyalists call him Malik al-Qulub, the King of Hearts. I mean, I'm not sure that there is that kind of unanimous endorsement of the king in Bahrain today, but nonetheless, it's a difficult situation. The last general elections to elect the 40 members of the Chamber of Deputies were held in November 2018 in 2 rounds. And quite unnecessarily, the 2 main opposition groups, the Shiite Alwefaq and the far smaller secular Wad group, were banned from fielding members in the 2018 elections. Unnecessary because Alwefaq would probably have refused to stand anyway. They did so in 2014. I personally regarded that as an act of betrayal of the electorate in Bahrain. The entire international community begged Alwefaq to stand in the elections, but they wouldn't. And no doubt they'll have repeated the same action this time around in 2018, I suspect. Crown Prince Salman, the eldest son of King Hamad, has been prime minister since last year. He's a vocal supporter of democratization, good governance, and equality before the law. He is, in my view, a good guy. He's a liberalizing force up to a point. Bahrain cannot defy its powerful neighbor, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, on which it is economically largely dependent. There are constraints which, if ignored, would be a step too far for the Saudis. Crown Prince Salman has pushed for engagement with the Shiite opposition. After the protests in 2011, he said security is not the only guarantor of stability. Without justice, there can be no freedom, and without freedom, there can be no true security. He set out a vision, a reform, although his hopes for liberalization were constrained by Saudi opposition. Bahrain cannot ignore Saudi Arabia. The situation in Bahrain is difficult and requires a slashed budget. Public debt, even before the pandemic, reached 89% of gross domestic product. Back in 2018, Bahrain had to be pledged $10 billion in financial aid from Gulf allies to avoid a credit crunch. The Bahrain economy contracted by 5.4% before the pandemic. The Bahrain has had to cut fuel and food subsidies while increasing taxes. So it's not an easy situation. And you could say that Bahrain is doing everything it can. I mean, the Crown Prince in February announced the construction of 15,000 new homes in East Head, Salman Town, and Al Bahar, alongside a new cardiac center in Manama. 15,000 homes may not seem much, but remember how small Bahrain is. It's extraordinary. I mean, Bahrain is the population of Springfield, Massachusetts in the USA, or Bristol in the United Kingdom. It's small in actual local population, and it's astonishing that everybody is at each other's throat in such a small country. The Next Century Foundation sees a new power sharing agreement in which the opposition gains half of the parliament's seats as essential for Bahrain. By moving towards a reformed bicameral government system in which power is distributed more equally, the population of Bahrain as a whole will be better represented in their parliament. This transition is dependent on national dialogue between opposition political parties and the government in Bahrain. Now, the opposition is led by what? I mean, I'll be provocative. I'll say the dead hand of Sheikh Ali Salman. He's the longest serving opposition leader in the world. We used to be able to look at Bahrain and said it had the longest serving prime minister and the longest serving opposition leader. Now we can only say it has the longest serving opposition leader in the world. Sheikh Ali Salman is leader of Alwefaq, National Islamic Society. And Wefaq won 45% of the seats and undoubtedly a far larger proportion of the popular vote back in the 2010 election. That's the last time Wefaq stood. It boycotted, as I said, the 2014 elections. Unnecessarily, Sheikh Ali Salman has been in prison since 2015, which is ridiculous. In some senses, you might say it was his salvation, in the sense that he's had his political credibility restored by being imprisoned. But of course, I wouldn't wish that on anybody. But our Wefaq are not free to act because they too are constrained by outside forces. They have I would say, the stultifying hand of Bahrain's most senior Shia cleric, Sheikh Isa Qasim, who I believe listens to what Iran tells him. And I think that it is Sheikh Issa who was behind the Wafaq boycott of the 2014 elections, because Iran probably recommended that to Sheikh Issa, and Sheikh Issa recommended to Ali Salman, and then there you had it. I mean, it's tragic, and now the government has gone further, unfortunately. Alwefaq has a poor record on women's rights issues. I mentioned this earlier. There's currently no unified personal status law in Bahrain on issues like divorce and child custody, meaning Sharia judges still have discretion on these issues. Women's rights activists have campaigned to change this, but have been resisted by Alwefaq. I mean, some MPs, or past ex-MPs, have said that the monarchy has no right to change the law because they may misinterpret the word of God. So to reiterate, Alwefaq is the largest Shia opposition party in the country and held more seats than any other single political group in the legislature between 2006 and 2011, and no doubt gained far more votes than is represented by the number of seats it held. In 2014, Alwefaq boycotted the national elections, and in 2016, and here you get the sting in the tail, the group was dissolved by a court in Bahrain in a bid to stamp out dissent. And in 2018, Parliament approved a bill that banned dissolved opposition groups from running independently in elections. And as I say, it's a ridiculous and unnecessary move by the government. Its leader, Sheikh Ali Salman, has been in prison since 2015. The Next Century Foundation calls for the release of Ali Salman, the leader of Alwefaq party, because that would ensure a fair and open national dialogue leading to transparent elections in the country, I believe. Meanwhile, well, yes, Bahrain is trying to liberalize. I mean, you may not think it is, but last year, Bahrain released one of the most vociferous of the anti-government activists, Nabil Rajab. I've listened to Nabil talk. Nabil's every word, well, I'm sorry, Nabil, but if you're probably not listening to this, but I tell you, every word drips with anger. Perhaps you would feel angry if you've been in prison so much, but it drips with so much anger that it's really very hard to listen to. In any other Gulf state, any other, they probably have executed him or thrown away the key. But he was released in Bahrain. But what is disturbing is, there's so many, there are good things and bad things. It's disturbing to see the government's decision to dissolve WAD, they call it the National Democratic Action Society, on charges of incitement to violence. I mean, what WAD did was to describe 3 men executed for killing police officers as martyrs. Of course, to my way of thinking, they killed police officers for a pastime in Bahrain. There are far too many killed. But we would call for the government to reverse its decision on the banning of Wafaq and WAD in order to facilitate a more democratic parliament. What are the plus points for Bahrain? I mean, Bahrain has a pluralistic society. It's progressive in many ways. A large part of Bahrain's population are Christian, quite a number are Hindu. It's more diverse than any of its GCC neighbors. The capital, Manama, contains not only mosques, both Sunni and Shia, but Christian churches, Hindu and Sikh temples, and a Jewish synagogue. So, Bahrain, there are other plus points about Bahrain that I particularly like. Bahrain has one of the most interesting, I mean, I'm an ex-prison visitor, so I care about these matters. One of the most interesting criminal justice systems in the world. Young offenders, it's new, but the new system now in Bahrain is that they're trying to keep young offenders out of the criminal justice system where possible by delivering street-level restorative justice in the form of community work. Now, many in the West look at and admire this system, so they don't even enter the criminal justice system. The only Western country to have adopted it so far is the Netherlands. I mean, that said, there are huge questions. The Next Century Foundation is concerned about the suppression of the independent press in Bahrain, a freedom enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. No independent opposition media has been allowed to operate in Bahrain for a number of years. Alwefaq, the prominent independent newspaper that had been active for some 15 years, was indefinitely suspended in June 2017 by Bahrain's information ministry. We, the Next Century Foundation, certainly call for the end of the indefinite suspension of Alwefaq, the country's sole opposition newspaper, to allow the country to exhibit the basic press freedoms guaranteed by the United Nations. Perhaps we are more disturbed by King Hamed's 2019 announcement that he was stepping up a campaign against the misuse of social media, which was not to be employed to spread dissension. This resulted in an increase in threats from the Ministry of the Interior against Bahrainis who made anti-government posts online. And personally, I think that is disturbing. Also disturbing is the fact that Bahrain habitually revokes the citizenships of people it regards as dissidents. I think at least 150 citizenships were removed between 2013 and 2016, probably more, considerably more. But to be fair, some have been returned their citizenship recently, and that is a huge plus. I'm glad to see it. What bothers me doubly is that the Bahrain government, if you criticize them on this issue, point to Britain's behavior, the behavior of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, which also revokes citizenships for a pastime, and say, well, look at Britain, if they can do it, we can do it. I really think the governments in the Western world need to show proper standards with regard to human rights, and or where are we going? So finally, the Next Century Foundation calls for the national dialogue between the Crown Prince and the opposition to be restructured and resumed to allow the diverse voices of Bahrain to all have seats at the talks around healing and reform. It's paramount that there is an agreed upon agenda for these talks with proper representation that reflects the views of all the people of Bahrain as a precursor to free and fair elections. And we do need free and fair elections in today's Bahrain. Okay, thank you. That's what I had to say.
Thank you so much, William, for sharing your thoughts and also giving us a more government perspective and explaining a government position. What we're going to do now is I'm going to give the floor to Ali for him to be able to explain to us a maybe more anti-government position. And then we will open up the floor to questions and leave with some concluding thoughts. Thank you. Ali, I give the floor to you.
Well, thank you very much, Marine. And I wish we can have a constructive also talk today. It's not only William, he's a friend, and he is, as the Next Century Foundation, trying always to help, trying to facilitate, trying to show us our mistakes also from time to time. I was with him on a podium in 2014 in London. What university, William, if you remind me, that was?
That was SOAS. I got into lots of trouble for that. Some people, the Bahrain ambassador to London wouldn't talk to me after the SOAS meeting. Oh dear.
All right.
Anyway,
and you know what? Because it said something Bahrain, because Sheikh Ali Salman just detained at that time, so everything starts moving toward negativity more than constructive dialogue or something. So they were burying the dialogue. we also share the idea of dialogue. We always call Bahrain government for unconditional dialogue, where we think and we believe in Alwefaq and in the national opposition groups in Bahrain. With dialogue only we can reach the reconciliation. With dialogue only we can go for political settlements. Let me just address a couple of things here. You did mention, William, a couple of good points, but I think you've missed one thing. Like, we've got more than 2,000 political prisoners also in jail. So if Bahraini government detained 4,000 and they release 2,000 in 10 years, doesn't mean like Bahrain government is really doing good things. So and also this stripping the nationality from Bahrain and retain it to some and leave the others without, doesn't mean this is a good thing. To us, if you steal from me like £100 and you give me 90, I wouldn't say thank you, William. I want my £100. This is not good. This is for me. It's it's my money. So you shouldn't be taken because you are stronger than me, because you have upper hand. So this is how we think. We think always there is a way for reconciliation. There is a way for political reform. I've seen also where I read the motion for resolution from the European Parliament last week. It was really constructive, and they were calling Bahraini government to establish, I would say here, a reform plan from 17 points. I know it's kind of condemnation to what Bahrain government is doing, but however, still it gives Bahrain government a kind of roadmap, like to stop doing, the death penalties. Also, we have to talk about today here. We have good things, but we have bad things. When we see our colleagues, our leaders still behind bars, it doesn't mean like, we are bad because we are calling for democracy. Or Alwefaq shut down because they were writing freely. It doesn't give the government the right to shut Alwefaq down and to put Sheikh Ali Salman and other leaders in jail because of whatsoever. Nelson Mandela served more than 27 years in jail and behind bars, and then he became president in Bahrain. He was also an opposition. Sheikh Ali Salman is not waiting in jail for as a political leader for Alwefaq. Sheikh Ali Salman, he is a figure now. So if he serves longer, doesn't mean like we tell Sheikh Ali Salman, go away today because you are in jail, and we will bring another people. We are banned from participating in political reform or from anything else. They have a parliament in Bahrain elected, yes. It's not by majority like where we were in during 2010, 2006. It has this parliament is really not doing well. Like last week, only one of the MPs, he was talking about 800 or 900 million stolen by the government, and they were telling him officially in the newspaper, and you will be in jail. Like you will be, we will shut you off. I mean, so that the parliamentarian also, they don't have really enough space, enough room to work to do any constructive or positive things here. So this resolution from European Parliament, where I suggest to start with, it calls for immediate and unconditional release of human rights defenders. Also, we still have human rights defenders in jail after 10 years. And it calls Bahraini governments to stop the harassment, and they lift the travel ban on them. And they urge Bahraini authority to uphold the right to freedom of expression and appeal that laws that criminalize the peaceful exercise to freedom of expression. Twitter, I can't imagine now, 2021, I'll be very, very careful not to tweet about my rights in my country. I can't believe that. I can't believe that, I would be very, very careful when I say something against the government. The government still have the mentality and the idea of a ruler. This is the problem also in Bahrain, where we think it is copied or similar to other governments in the region, in the Middle East. But we as a Bahraini, we have this dream long time ago, and we think Bahrain could be better than other countries. Bahrain as a smallest country in the Middle East, still we can have the best and better model. When we say constitutional monarchy, that's what we wanted in Bahrain. I don't think constitutional monarchy, we have the upper hands will go to the authority, and people in Bahrain, they cannot have, an independent newspapers to express their feeling, to say what they want to say. So, and also this parliament, they condemn the continual use of torture and other cruel. I mean, still torture there. It's been covered by previous US administrations. That's not from me, that's from the police officers in jail. They were telling the detainees, it's a Trump era now. It's not anymore Obama. That was before, Biden, where we can repress you, where we can torture you, and no one will talk about you. No one will bring you because we have business with the United States. So Bahrain government is still using this, political, politicized people from outside whom they get the nationality in Bahrain and they work and they serve as an officers, where this is political naturalization, we call it in Bahrain. It's not normal as per the law, so they naturalize people as per the law like any other European or United States country. And also this resolution urged the government of Bahrain to abide by its obligations and commitments under the UN Convention Against Torture. So Bahrain still, William and others here, is still banning the special rapporteur for torture to go to Bahrain, still banning a human rights organization. Do they have something to hide? So they don't allow people to go, they don't allow people to visit jails. I mean, if you have nothing to hide, I mean, when you say the ombudsman in Bahrain, what ombudsman is doing in Bahrain if you raise a case against the police officers and you don't see them in jail, you don't see them, in a trial, in a fair trial. So this is one of the things also where we need to focus and highlight on. And well, I mean, lot of things, but I don't want to go ahead with all of these points, but the last few points, 3 points were 15, 16, 17. I will come to these later when I finish my my plan here. Like, we need economic reform also, I would say, here in Bahrain, William. The government have taken working to bring international investors. I mean, they keep working to do that, to develop Bahrain economic growth, but they don't have transparency. So where this money goes, how this money goes to the Bahraini people. I mean, if you pay tax here in the UK or United States, in the end of the year, you get a list where your money goes. It shows like how much your contribution in health, how much your contribution in aid, how much your contribution in education, everything else. But Bahrain is not in this place, I would say here. I mean, we should call for political reform that match the government initiatives for inviting international investors here, where the investors now, they don't go because they know we still have detainees in Bahrain for freedom of expression, where they were calling for political reform. They still ask about where is Sheikh Ali Salman, where is Alwefaq, where is Wa'ad, where is the high representative groups in Bahrain, what the rulers is doing. I know we have the prime minister for 50 years, nearly or close to 50 years, and he passed away in December last year, Remembrance Day. But we still have, like, appointed prime minister as a crown prince appointed as a prime minister now. So we have two positions in one man, and we have the king. So the king, prime minister, and the crown prince, and two personals here, where they can control and they can the legislative and executive powers also. It's in their hands, both of them. Where the people here representative is, like, the big question: if the parliament elected freely, completely, without any gerrymandering system, I would say here, like, William, I was elected and I got in my district majority more than 6 members in the southern district in Bahrain, where you see the discrimination here. The Shia people, they got, like, 1/6, like 1 member equals 6 members here. So this is, I don't think it's fair. Your vote equals 6 votes. Could be in other districts in the United States or in the UK even here, 1-2, maybe 1-3 in some cases, but not 1-6 as a majority. We've mentioned business, and I would like to focus here also on the business data, where it should submit it to the World Bank. This is one of the ideas that we are thinking now, and it should be submitted to the World Bank regularly and should be presented publicly to make sure it is fair and no corruption. The corruption in Bahrain and the Arab country is really, it cannot cover that. We have the deficit in Bahrain, it goes to 15 billion now, Bahraini dinar. And we don't have revenues. We don't have enough revenues. We have, how many barrels we are producing? 50,000 barrels per day, fuel, oil. We're getting 150 from Saudi Arabia. And when the next door neighbor, if they are angry, if they don't like Bahraini government or people, and if they close the tap, that's when the gate, and we will not have money next day, we'll not have milk or butter and milk for the breakfast in the next day. So this is also another issue where Bahraini government thinking. I will link this to Iran in a very, very short time, where you've mentioned Sheikh Isa Qasim and Iran also, and William, I don't think you were correct on that. Sheikh Isa Qasim, as a Bahraini, he was stripped from his nationality and he left Bahrain. He came to the UK here for treatment and still have no nationality. He cannot return back to Bahrain. He has no place to go other than Najaf as an Ayatollah or Qom as an Ayatollah. He has good experience in both countries, in both places. For his health condition, he chose to stay in Qom as an Ayatollah and as a cleric man. And Sheikh Isa Qasim doesn't need somebody to dictate him, to tell him. As a member of parliament in 1971, he was elected as a member of. He doesn't need somebody to tell him what to do in Bahrain for reform. And his speech and he always against violence. He always against what we call in Arabic al-fawda, where everyone else is going to do whatever they want to do. He wants to save people's life and he wants to get dignity. And this is, if you read his speech as Ayatollah, he mentioned always, the dignity. He was received also by Ayatollah Sistani, who just received the Pope last week or 2 weeks ago. So he was welcomed by Ayatollah Sistani, and very well. And as a moderate, they talk very well, and they both of them, they share an ideas about how the people should get and they receive their basic rights in Bahrain. So Bahrain, I think they should release. Also, we have to talk about this. They should release all the political prisoners of consent. That's the United States statement from time to time. In 10 years here, we've heard about it. But Bahrain is not listening. Bahrain is not open door to United Nations or open door to European Parliament members. They choose whom they want to invite. They choose the people. If you want to get first class tickets, you go to welcome the reform of Bahrain. If you want to be banned, you just tweet against Bahrain. When you reach the border, William, the first thing, the officers there, they will open your Twitter account, Facebook, they will see if you tweet against Bahrain, you will be banned from Bahrain. This is how the journalists telling us. And try, any journalist, they try to go to Bahrain. If they were tweeting against Bahrain, they don't enter Bahrain. We are not welcome. You are not welcome to go to the paradise, which is called Bahrain there. I mean, the trade reform required, it should be in line with the democratic reform. We cannot say we will improve the trade and the economy, and still you have that the political system is not improved. I mean, we need a full reform of the political system. You cannot kill people, ban people, jail people, and say like I'm straightforward. I'm really a good, I would say here, a country where I could be in the top of list of these democratic countries. No, the Bahrain is not on the top of the list of this list. Relationship with neighbors, where I want to mention here, it should be improved to reduce the tension and to protect citizens also here. We don't want, as a small country, I don't want, as a Bahraini, honestly, I don't want to see Bahraini army in Bahrain. We don't need an army to spend a lot of money, 50,000, 80,000, jobless people. They got the job because they are from one sect in Bahrain. Where do you see Bahrain Defense Force, William? No Shia, 0% of Shia in the defense force. The police also has 0% or 1% maybe in some administrative jobs here and there long time ago, all people, but it's not like what Basuni said, BICI commission report 10 years ago or 9 years ago, when they said that Bahrain should security for all. Everyone else should be engaged in security in the system. Like South Africa, like Northern Ireland. I believe Northern Ireland as an example, and I believe on the South Africa also as an example. So both examples we study very well as a Bahraini, and we would like to see. And I like also the idea of a new power sharing agreement, where I would like to conclude my speech today with it, William. Also, educational for all, no discrimination, and fair opportunities needed here. Like if you are Shia, you don't get high education because They said, okay, go to the Shia community to give you this opportunity or time. I know there are a couple of opportunities like given to the Shia from Crown Prince office. That was long time ago also here, where we welcomed also this, and we said this is an example, but Ministry of Education, they don't give really fair between Shia and Sunnis also for this. No compromise on human rights. There's no compromise at all. If Nabil Rajab is released and he is banned from travel, this is not something really good. We welcome these steps, and we want to build on that step so we get another one. Stop torture doesn't need any job. No investment in stop torture. No investment. Stop torture. Stop. The investment is saving your tools and your equipment and your energy for giving these instructions to the police who are torturing the protesters and others. The education for all. Crown Prince should return dialogue with political parties leaders. That's the main things here where we need to focus, William, or we need to focus in the future. We have 10 years now. It has not been only 2011 February, it was 1920s, 1960s, 1970s, 80s, 1994, build up. And we were participating in the parliament, yes, but people also outside, they were angry. You mentioned the housing, still we need 50,000 housing. Still a friend of mine, his application from 1991, he got his house last year. So that was, I think, 20 or 21 years. By that time, he has a son and a couple of sons where they need also housing, and all of them now in 2 rooms, the whole family in 2 rooms, and he's sharing a room with his wife on. So this is not something like really what we want. While at the same time, you see the new political, new naturalized Bahraini getting their houses quicker and easier here. Roadmap to political settlements should be considered by authorities. Engagement required. Where is the engagement if you are banning political parties from participating? No matter our position to boycott the election for a couple of reasons. Yes, this is our right, to boycott the election. This is not something that international community should say, oh, you've missed the opportunities here. I know, I just said, like, we need to improve the political system. We need to improve the election system here, where not one MP as a Shia equal to 6 MPs as a Sunni. They don't have Sunnis or Shia in Bahrain. They should not be a difference from each other. You shouldn't have, this a small card where it shows your name in Shia and your name is Sunnis, where everyone else knows that the majority in Bahrain Shia, but they're getting less representations in Bahrain. Okay, I will go back before I conclude here to the European Parliament last week resolution, where also they call on the new Prime Minister Prince Salman bin Hamad Al Khalifa to use his authority to move Bahrain towards political reform, respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms, allow political parties and clubs to resume their legal, peaceful political and cultural activities. These things, the whole statements welcomed by Sheikh Issa Qasim, William, 2 days ago only, officially on Twitter. I don't think Iranians telling Sheikh Issa Qasim to welcome this if they are against Bahraini authority, because Sheikh Issa Qasim is not dictated by somebody else, or he's not, no, he understands Bahrain needs this reform. So that's why he's tweeting. He said he welcomed all these reforms. He welcomed all these, statements by European parliamentary, where he said they are friends of Bahraini government. United States and European, they are friends of Bahraini governments, and they are telling them, you have to reform their system. You have to reform your system. They are calling Bahraini authorities to repeal Article 354 and 334 of Penal Code, which condone violence against women also here, instruct the president of forwards. I mean, this is something internally with the William. The last thing here before I conclude, maybe we'll go to that question. Sorry, I take a long time here. The new power sharing agreement. If you have an idea about this new power sharing agreement, I would like to discuss it with you and the audience here today. We've suggested this with the authority in Bahrain and what we called Bahrain reform plan, where we called for everyone else to come on table and to say, we said this is white paper, okay? We need to discuss something where everyone else have, to put their ideas on that paper, where we should have kind of power sharing agreement. Okay, if we want to be part of the system, we want to be part of the system. I was with one minister, if you know her, Samira Rajab. She was with me on TV and BBC, and she said, "هؤلاء يريدون السلطة" in Arabic. These people, they want to get power in the government. I said, yes, we are there to be part of the system. We are not there as an opposition to continue as an opposition. We are not rejectionists. We were part of the system in Bahrain for a short time as an opposition in the parliament, where everyone else in Bahrain, Shia and Sunni, speaks about this, and we're still working to be part of the system, where we understand the dialogue only is the way step forward, where the Crown Prince Prime Minister can push now, can have this as an initiative again. Where are the 7 principles? Where we believe those 7 principles, they had enough, I would say here, those 7 principles were killed by the troops, where they are still in Bahrain, Saudis and Emiratis, the troops. I don't know, it's unnecessary also troops to stay in Bahrain from 2011 until now. And these troops, they crossed the bridge to kill the protesters, to stop all the political, peaceful movements in Bahrain, where Wefaq and others leading this. And Wefaq and others, by the way, before Wefaq and other political parties against the violence in Bahrain, continue saying that we have declaration, very clear, we clarify this many times, we are against violence, we are with dialogue, we want to sit on table. Where are Bahraini authority now? Where is the Bahrain government to listen to this and to come here to join us dialogue in Manama? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ali. Thank you for your insightful input. It certainly highlights, and both of your discussions highlight really well the different perspectives on the issues that Bahrain is facing right now. I will now offer the floor to William if he has anything to respond to Ali, and then we will move on to questions. William, would you like to take the floor?
Well, I mean, that's very heartening to hear what Ali has to say, and I'm really encouraged. Yeah, the system in Bahrain is not perfect. We all know that, and I would encourage those that feel they've been mistreated by the police to use the system, even though it's imperfect. There are 2 ombudsmen, and there is there's also a kind of public prosecutor's investigating office. And sometimes, I mean, I know I went once to raise an issue with, who is it? Nawaf Mouawda, who is I think he's the Ministry of Interior Ombudsman. And he said, well, the opposition never raised that with me. Now, you may regard it as a waste of time, but nonetheless, I do think, or the person concerned never raised it with me, he said. And it really matters that these issues are raised through the channels that are available, I'd say, when you're talking about issues like torture and so on. Because then it helps us to call people to account if that's the case. And if you say that people like Amnesty do that, Amnesty doesn't. Amnesty sends a round-robin letter that is pages long to every minister and every official, and they get exhausted by it. But specific issues raised by Bahrainis, I think then we have a chance to pursue those ourselves. The only other power sharing, you ask for a lot if you want a total power sharing government, while we have the hand of Saudi Arabia sitting in the background. But what you can expect and anticipate, I believe, is that you should at least have parity in members of parliament. I mean, you have more than, your vote deserves more than parity, but that's not the point. If we can get Wefaq back into parliament in 2022, then there's real hope. I don't want to, actually, I'm starting a whole nother thing, but so forgive me, and you want to bring in question, but it's really outstanding what you had to say, Ali. Thank you. Yeah.
I absolutely agree. Thank you really to the both of you. So I now encourage all attendees to ask any questions, because we will be now moving on to the questions section.
Marina, I think there are two questions in the
Yeah,
chat here. If you need to
exactly.
go. Okay, sorry.
So the first question is, do the speakers feel that President Biden will continue the relative leniency of the Trump administration regarding the Bahraini regime's human rights record? If Biden takes a tougher line, might this neutralize Riyadh's anti-liberalizing influence in Bahrain? And the second question we have, and I'll let you then take the floor to answer them. The second question is, Bahrain's position in the GCC gives it a key position of influence amongst its partners. At the same time, Bahrain is a key ally of the US, with the US Navy Fifth Fleet housed in Bahrain. And with a large Shiite population, can this unique position be used by the government of Sheikh Al Khalifa to influence Saudi Arabia to move to enter talks with Iran and reduce the political instability in the Middle East? Thank you. I now give the floor to William or Ali, whoever would like to answer first.
Ali, go ahead. You're muted, Ali.
Sorry, can you hear me now? Okay. Both points are not only questions; they are like both of them very good points. I would say here, Biden's administration encouraging the GCC countries, or maybe the Middle East countries, including Egypt, maybe from Egypt to Middle East here, to improve a human rights situation. That definitely will give the opportunity to Bahrain here to also to think about this. They start thinking about I don't know what they call it in English, new jailing systems, like, you know, they send people to home in the morning and they bring them back at night to sleep in jail, and they just give them electronic monitoring and something like that. So people there in Bahrain, they are not accepting this because they deserve freedom, fully freedom here. And also American governments here, we don't want every time and then think about what Biden administrative, Trump administrative, Democratic or, you know, Republican. We need a system in Bahrain sustained. Where we see that the international community have some influence, I would say here, but Bahraini governments, Bahraini authority, they are controlling all the, you know, daily job, like the business every day as usual, because they have all the power there in Bahrain here. Like if you want to see improving the system in Bahrain, if the United States wants to improve, I want to merge the two questions. They still need to use this, you know, Fifth Fleet as a power. If they are serious, where we think they should be serious, they should be, because the principles in the United States or United Kingdom should be similar, you know, like we were thinking how Bahrain should be, like, you know, equal to where, like, you know, United States, United Kingdom, European, you know, democratic system. We were thinking always about democratic system. I believe the new administrative will do something, but I believe Bahrain should take this opportunity now. COVID, economy, a new administrative, a new prime minister in Bahrain, where all of these things could bring the opposition with them together to think about future in Bahrain, to build Bahrain in the future without having it's him or me, it's me or him. Like, it is endless. I would say here the dialogue for the second one, the dialogue between Iran and Saudi Arabia will help a lot. The dialogue between, or the talks between the United States and Saudi Arabia, it might not help Bahrain a lot, but the dialogue and the reconciliation here, or when they talk to each other, but this is where we are. As a Bahraini, majority Shia in Bahrain and Sunnis, they're always the repression on the Shia because Iranian Shia. We are Shia before than Iran. We were, I mean, this is the history. The Bahraini demands inside Bahrain. We are talking about representative in Bahrain, not representative in Tehran or in Riyadh or wherever else. So we need to be as a Bahraini, but we have a problem in the region where we see the tensions between Iran and Saudi Arabia historically affect on the Bahrain internal issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ali. William, would you like to take the floor to answer the questions?
Yes, thank you. I certainly would. Interesting, aren't they? Do the speakers feel that President Biden will continue relative leniency of the Trump administration regarding Bahrain regime's human rights record? I hate that word regime. I just think it's, everybody uses it to slag off somebody else. They'll talk about the Saudi regime, or they'll talk about the Israeli regime, or they talk about the Iranian regime. And they don't actually use it in this problem, but the Bahrain government's human rights record is the question. I think it's interesting to see the America come back to the UN Human Rights Council for the first time at the 46th session, which is underway now. And they haven't, I don't think they yet appointed a full ambassador, but they have a representative there. It's magnificent to see that. It really is magnificent to see that. And Bahrain cares what the UN Human Rights Council says. It cares deeply. The government of Bahrain cares deeply. It probably has the largest delegation of any country on the planet to the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva in normal years. I know we're constrained by COVID now. But so it really does matter. It really does matter to Bahrain. And yes, they've kept the UN Human Rights Inspector out. We would actually argue that they should let them in. They have a lot of good news. You know, it's not all bad news. And arguably, the situation has improved in Bahrain. If you look back over the years and look at the situation now. So I don't think they should be ashamed. They should let the human rights inspectors in. And yes, there are huge issues that are not right. And yes, they'd be called out over those, but it would be better. It would be better in the longer term. Will President Biden be different from President Trump? I think his obsession is curiously democracy. It's an old American thing. More than human rights. I think he cares a lot about world democracy. I think he will be different. He's already shown himself different with regard to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. He stopped arms sales to Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia is no doubt very disturbed by that. And Saudi Arabia has started to take the tiniest little moves to try and placate President Biden. For example, the release of Lou Jane, the girl the lady who protested against on the driving issue, who was unnecessarily jailed. So yes, I think that Biden taking a tougher line on Saudi Arabia, or at least, yes, it will make a difference, and it can make a difference, particularly if the U.S. ambassador to Bahrain is effective and speaks for Biden in the right way. Yeah, I think things can change, hopefully, and the U.S. has enormous chance to make a difference. The other question is so interesting. Can Bahrain influence its partners? Can Bahrain, because of its large Shiite population, try and influence the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to move towards talks with Iran? Now, wouldn't that be lovely? Wouldn't that be lovely if the government of the Crown Prince quietly lobbied quietly, discreetly lobbied President Biden and indeed Mohammed bin Salman in Saudi Arabia lobbied for rapprochement with Iran, because we need this. We need an end to this sapping, energy sapping hostility between Saudi Arabia and Iran. It is really such a waste of time. It is meaning holding up peace in Yemen, holding up peace in Syria, holding up peace everywhere. It is just, and never mind who's to blame, Iran or Saudi Arabia. That's not the point. The point is it is an utter waste of time, and we need rapprochement between these two great nations so the Middle East can get on and have more peace and stability, and it will impact Bahrain. So it would be lovely to think that the Crown Prince's office might lobby quietly and discreetly President Biden in that regard. Perhaps it will. Can only hope. And it would be a wonderful thing. But I don't expect them to do it publicly. That would be a step too far. But, yeah.
Well, I mean, William, Mary, if JCPOA go ahead, I mean, this agreement restores, I mean, things will be moving definitely. And I see, like, you know, whatever Saudi Arabia received as a, you know, they call it repression now from United States, from this new administrative. They were really, like, you know, they had a big concern. That was one of the things discussed clearly on the GCC government during the election or before. We came to know as an opposition also, Bahrain government discussed the new era. We without a Trump, they call it. So we without a Trump, what do we do? So that was before the election. And there was a couple of things that they've decided to do, but I would see here the reformists within the government in both countries here, like, you know, especially Bahrain, we have hardliners and we have moderate. And where we see like moderate, still they are from ruling family, but they still want to get stability, thinking more about, you know, economy. We're hosting Formula One, and very soon also we want to get more, you know, visitors for that. Okay, apart from COVID now, we still want to get more visitors to come to Bahrain for health, for education, from GCC country, moving around here. It will help the economy in Bahrain instead of only getting, you know, an aid from the GCC country, where it is called Marshall, also the GCC Marshall plan, where we get 10 billion in 10 years. Without this, William, no economy in Bahrain. The contractors, I was serving in the civil service in Bahrain as a project manager in Ministry of Ports and Housing at that time. We had a lot of projects, you know, financed by the GCC country, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Emirates only. Apart from this, we don't have enough money to pay salaries because we have a lot of people serving in the defense force where they do nothing. They are not really an army, like where we see like we need an army in Bahrain. As I just said, like we have some little problems with Qatar, but this is not a Qatari and Bahraini problem, like population between people. It's family. It's one family only, and they travel from Al Khalifa. They came from Zubara, from Qatar to Bahrain, and now they have cousins and family. It happens everywhere. Like, you know, but who's paying the bills? Who's paying the price? The Bahraini, for example, here I would say. Well, we don't have a problem with as a Bahraini and Iranian, for example. We don't know. It's not related to each other very closely, like Iranian and Bahraini, like the GCC. GCC, Kuwaiti, Qatari, Emirates, Saudi, they married from Bahrain, Bahrain married from these countries. So we want also more stability within the GCC where it is not there. And you can see it from Al Ula, the last summit in Riyadh. It was not really healthy, like, you know. The king, he hasn't been there, though it is Saudi Arabia. Sultan Oman, he was not there, though it is Saudi Arabia. So you see only, like, you know, two leaders. King Salman, he was not attending. Prince Mohammed bin Salman was there. So this is one of the things that needs for settlements. I mean, in the region. I totally agree with you, and I keep saying this, William. I believe Bahrain can play this role. I believe, yes, it is a very, very good point here. Like, we still have good relationship with an excellent relationship with Saudi Arabia, and we still can play this role if we don't put ourselves as a Bahrain in the position of Saudi Arabia for everything. Because the Yemen issues, we went to Yemen also, we go to Yemen to fight Yemenis, yeah? I don't know why. I totally disagree with that. United Nations, all the resolutions, And Bahrain also have troops there in Yemen. To do what? I mean, we have no business to do in Yemen. Supporting Saudi Arabia? Saudi Arabia have troops in Bahrain to support Bahrain government from the protesters. And now we're sending troops from Bahrain to support Saudi Arabia in Yemen. That's not logic. You know, this is something illogical. So, yeah, I'm fine with that. But before we conclude, I have a couple of points if we have time. I don't know what is the timing now. It's almost an hour. So I don't know if William has something to say, and I have very short like things to say, maybe 1 minute.
Yeah, that's perfect. And then we can move on to concluding remarks. Thank you.
All right. I mean, I would say here, the economic development here, I want to make it very clear. Economic development is originally linked to political reform and the transparency. That's what we need to go, and we need to think, we need to do, we need to work on in Bahrain, so we have this in the future. For this to happen, Bahrain must have independent and accountable state agencies and branches of government. That is also something where we need to address and to talk about. The real dialogue between the Crown Prince and the Bahraini people through political parties and independent groups must be preceded by releasing prisoners of conscience. I cannot, I mean, it wouldn't happen in South Africa to have the settlement while Mandela is still in jail. We still have to get all these Mandelas to sit on table and to discuss the political reform. Otherwise, we will have the same thing continue and roll over in the coming, decades. Human rights must be hallmark of government, public relations regardless of political, economics, social, and religious affiliation. So I believe there's no compromise always on human rights. So we shouldn't go and take 10 and give 8 or 7, or give 2 and say, we are a good country, now we are giving a couple of things. Last thing, we are ready as an opposition party to start the dialogue. We were ready also from that time, unconditional dialogue with the government to reach the political settlement where we believe without it, this will continue. No matter what happened in Bahrain, no matter what you see, bright picture, nice things, nice angle from Bahrain TV to show you this is how Bahrain is. The actual Bahrain, still you will see poverty, still you will see jobless people, discrimination, lot of things, undercovered, where we believe it could happen, it could be resolved if we talk to the government and the government open their doors to listen to the people.
Absolutely, Ali. Thank you. That was a great point. Now we're starting to move towards the end of this discussion. So I would love for you to share any concluding thoughts you have. Go ahead. William, would you like to take the floor?
Yeah, sure. I mean, thank you very much, Ali, and thank you, Maureen, for all you've done and sharing us. Yes, how interesting it is. The Kingdom of Bahrain has potentially a great future, and it just needs. I just always think again and again what a small country it is, and how unnecessary this confrontation is. And if the international community could do a lot more. The international community can't solve the situation in Syria or Yemen or Libya, or well, Libya's getting a little better lately, hopefully. But anyway, it can't seem to solve much. And yet, Bahrain, come on, guys. I mean, Bahrain is small, and it's a key country. Yes, you have major U.S. naval base there. You even have a little tiny British one. It's a key country, and we care about it. A lot of us care about Bahrain. It's a very special and unique little gem of a country, perhaps partly because it's a multifaceted country with different nationalities. Sorry, not just nationalities, but different cultures and different people in one country. A multicultural, multifaceted country is always a beautiful thing when it's working well. And there's absolutely no need that Bahrain could not be that perfection that it should be. I liked your statement, national dialogue without precondition. It bothered me a little when you half offered a precondition before. You said it was going to be dialogue without precondition, but then you said, Ali, dear Ali, that release of prisoners first, which sounded a little like a precondition. But well, you can come back and put me straight in a moment. But it just occurs to me that we really do need national dialogue without precondition. We need to get on with it. And I would hope that we can see Wefaq participating in elections. I would hope that well, of course, the constraint, the person to blink first is the government. The government has to move because it's outlawed Alwefaq. But that said, I would hope that Wefaq could set the agenda by saying it will stand. It will stand, making a public statement saying it will stand for elections in 2022. And now the onus is on the government. It could put the boot on the government's foot, and then the international community might feel a greater sense of responsibility to try and encourage free and fair elections in Bahrain. Okay, they're not going to be perfect elections. I know what you're saying, Ali, about the constituency sizes. The constituency sizes are not fair, but that's not the point. You've got to deal with the situation you've got and work with the situation you've got, and then make things better. And the only way you make things better is by getting in, being, what's the phrase, a dog in the fight. You've got to be in there. You can't sort of sit from the sidelines. You've got to be engaged and change things and seize the gains you can make. And this is what I really think is so necessary. And unless, I mean, there's no reason Wefaq can't take a lead in this rather than being the one waiting for action. Is my view. Anyway, I am encouraged by this discussion. I would have liked to have seen somebody Bahraini representing the government view. We haven't got it. You've got William here, and I'm scarcely being fair. I think I'm trying to be fair to the government because I do like the government. I like the government of Bahrain. Many of them are my friends. I really like them, and I just wish that Bahrain's problems could be solved. And as you know, many in the opposition are my friends. The Hermes, the proprietor of Alwefaq, and so on. I mean, I just care about. I do care about Bahrain. I think that we need to move forward, and 2022 is the target, the new elections, and I would desperately like to see full participation in those elections. That's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, William. I now pass the floor to Ali to give us your concluding remarks. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. It was a very good constructive discussion. I always like the ideas from you, William, and those two questions also really constructive here, where we believe whoever is listening to this, I also have like this wish, like where the Bahraini government to listen to what we are saying. Otherwise, it's going to be like in a closed room. If there is no remarks where it reached to Bahrain, I always welcome, these remarks. It goes to the government and public, where I don't see any reason why it's not. And I would say here, like the dialogue without, preconditions, but dialogue with whom? When I mentioned political prisoners, like dialogue, when I mentioned Mandela as an example, should be with the key people. You cannot say releasing all prisoners as a condition without starting dialogue. We were not saying this, and we are not saying this right now, but I said dialogue with the right people. The right people. I would say here Sheikh Ali Salman as a political figure, where all the government, all the level of the government in Bahrain, they believe like with him they only can talk, with him they only can, do better things. But sadly he's in jail. He's in jail now. With Fox the agenda, yes, there is no problem on that. We always, but we need to see. I mean, you cannot talk by yourself. I go on Twitter today as a Wefaq and I announce the agenda. I mean, where is the international community who facilitate this? We need the facilitation by the international community. Then Wefaq can take this a step forward. I mean, we're always ready to do that. We're always ready to go ahead with the, new ideas, but we need to get this. Either maybe new administrative United States, European Union now with this resolution might take this as an opportunity also to come to bring Wefaq and to bring the government and say, okay, this is here where we are, and we want to go there in 2020, where it is not too far, honestly. We have only 18 months, William, for the election, where everyone else think Bahrain government is banning Wefaq from participating, not only jailing their figures, and not only the figures of Wefaq, somebody like me or somebody like, Khalil Al-Marzouk or Ibrahim Sharif or Abdel Jalil Khalil or whoever was, member of parliament or member of senior figures in the opposition party, even though the second or third level of the party people, they are not welcome to be part of the election. They're banned from participating in the election. So this is how the Bahraini government, maybe international community can change some of these, but I would say here, the last thing here, this situation now is not going to stay for long. I mean, for long. Like, what's happening in Bahrain, it's not separated from what's happening in the Saudi Arabia, and in the Gulf, Arabian Gulf. I think Emirates, they got the lesson earlier than anybody else. And Emirates, they understand the change in the, world here, like, the United States changing towards, the Middle East, where we need to go first. And really, they take this opportunity now, and okay, they are first. And now they want to go with Yemen, for example. They want to do something with Yemen. They want to do something with and they said, okay, they are talking secretly, privately with Iran. And apart from Saudi Arabia, apart from Bahrain, because they said we have trade, issues between Iran and United Arab Emirates. Historically, this is where we can also play this role. I mean, we are the loser, Bahrain, because of this bad relationship with the Middle East, with Iran, with the Gulf, and with Qatar. Qatar have good relation with Saudi Arabia now. Iran have good relation with Emirates. Bahrain have no relation with Qatar or with Iran, losing all of this. Political settlement, economy. We're losing gas. Where we can get this from our next door neighbor, helping Bahrain for future, where we need the energy, where we need also to improve our economy. As an opposition, we always welcome the dialogue. We always condemn the violence. We always want to have political settlement. We always welcome any mediation role by international community. And we always, from here, maybe we can open this floor. In Bahraini both, we need facilitation to move forward towards a constructive dialogue, meaningful dialogue, where we believe we can reach a lot when we start talking about, our demands, and Bahraini government maybe start talking about confidence building measures.
Thank you so very much, Ali, for your comments. And that concludes our discussion for today. Thank you to all the participants. Thank you, William, and thank you, Ali, for your contributions. It was really a very constructive and fruitful discussion. And thank you to the attendees for your questions. They were very good questions. We hope to see you all next year for the 2022 version of the Middle East Dialogue, hopefully in person. So
maybe
thank
Next Century
you all.
Foundation will do something earlier. So Next Century Foundation always, do good things. So
why not?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for the organizers. Thank you. Thanks, Gabriela. Also. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Really excellent.
Bye.
Yeah. Yes. Look forward.